So, if I came from the bar to service a table with a wine that had the necessity of aeration or decantation, it will be identified before. Typically, most of the bartenders are kind of dialed into which ones require it, and a lot of times it might be me or Mike or somebody like that are coming up there and saying, hey, I need this wine and I need a decanter or whatever. But I want you to understand what the differences are. Okay, so first of all, about 90% of the wines that we are dealing with here in the restaurant, what we are doing is aerating wine. Now, what aerating actually does is introduce oxygen or oxygenate the wine, which helps the wine to, say, blossom more quickly, open up. You got to remember, we're a restaurant. We're dealing on a table turn that's maybe for wine drinkers might be approach the 2 hour, maybe 2.5 hour mark. But for the most, our average table times is anywhere between 1:15 and 1:30. Hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 30 minutes. So we don't have like all day to get a wine going. And some of these wines, especially some of these bigger ones that have tannic structures or stuff like that, they need a little oxygen to help them go, get going. They may be a little tight, they may be tightly wound. They have to kind of get going, and that's one of the procedures. Now, decanting is a different ballgame. Decanting is the procedure by which we want to separate sediment from the juice. Okay, old wines that have been, let's say, in the cellar for 30 years or something like that, typically they will develop some sediment. And that sediment over the course of time, as a bottle has been laying on its side, which is the proper position for the bottle to be weighing so that it hits the cork, that sediment will lay in the bottom. As we come and we get the bottle, the sediment's going to slide towards the bottom. With decanting, it's a different procedure. We use a candle. I don't have that here to demonstrate, but what happens is we take a vessel of some sort, we have a candle, and what I will do is the candle is lit, and as I pour the wine, I can see the sediment in the juice because of the candle. And so as I pour, and by the way, this would probably not be one that we would be decanting because this is a burgundy bottle, so you can see it's got a smoother shape, whereas a Bordeaux bottle, such as this is a big one, but if you can see this big thing right here, this is called the shoulder, all right? Just like a glass has a shoulder, this bottle has a shoulder. And that is all first growths, actually all Bordeaux are bottled in that kind of bottle, and that's hence the reason that's really called a Bordeaux bottle. And the reason is because that shoulder is where we catch the sediment. So as we pour it, that shoulder right there, you can see from the candle behind it come and kind of get into that position. And we don't typically pour all the wine out. We'll leave just a little bit so that it kind of keeps the sediment in that position, and then we're done. Okay, and then we pour the wine just like we would in any case. Now, one thing you'll also notice is that I have not distributed any other wine glasses. Typically, I don't do that. Now, I'm not saying that you can't. You can, if you choose, distribute all the wine glasses to the appropriate people that are drinking. I like to, just as I always want the person, the host, to taste the wine. Then I will go and distribute wine glasses to those that are drinking.
If it was bad, maybe you wouldn't even put the other glasses down.
That's right. You just never know. So I like to do it like this. And in the same case, when we are decanting wine, I will decant it before I put glasses on the table. Okay, so once I've done, and I'm going to tell you one of the reasons. Now, granted, I know that some people taste wines, but it won't be the first time that I've decanted a wine, and I have smelled when you decant or when you aerate a wine, there's a lot of aroma molecules are getting moved around, and they come out. And if I detect something, which it could be cork taint or something like that, I might suggest to the host, I'm a little, whatever. Did you find that wine okay? Sometimes they'll just say it okay because they're not dialed in quite 100%. But I'm so used to these things that it's one of those things where, it doesn't happen often. It's happened maybe once. So it's not something that I would be concerned about. But in any case, so now what we're going to do is we are going to put the wine into a vessel. It's going to allow it to open up. Now we use a particular, we've been using these for about, I want to say 4 years. This is called the decantus. Basically, it's an aerator. The aerator, this particular aerator, uses something called the Venturi principle. Now, if you can see across that thing, you see these. It's got a tube going down the middle. It's got a little. This is the screen. Okay, the screen catches sediment. Right. Okay, you see this little tube. You see a tube going down through the middle. Okay, you see this big, sort of like cup portion. Okay, the cup has a little hole at the bottom, then it's got a tube, and then there's two tubes that come into the side. I'm just going to let you take a look at that. Can you see that?
Oxygen in, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it sucks it in.
All right. So now what that is this thing, by taking a larger volume of liquid, putting it through a smaller hole, it creates
Suction.
It does. Well, it doesn't create suction. It creates speed. Okay. By having these little tubes here, that's where the vacuum comes.
The vacuum, yeah.
It's vacuum because it's going through, and then it creates speed going through the bottom. It sucks air into those little things.
Oh, that's the little sound it makes.
That's exactly right. This little sound that it makes, and it impregnates the wine with oxygen. And as you will see when I pour this thing in there, what's going in the top is going to look like just a liquid. When it's coming through here, you're going to see a ton of minuscule bubbles, and then you'll see a bunch in the bottom. And that's one of the reasons that we choose to use this. And there are a number of other manufacturers in the marketplace that use a similar principle. It's called the Venturi principle. You can look it up. But in any case, what we do with this is once we've tasted the wine and we've accepted it, we're going to pour it through there, and you're going to hear it. Now you can see, as you can look through there, look at those bubbles. You see the bubbles coming through there, and look at the bubbles developing on the top of the bottle.
I just lost some picture. And I could just barely hear it. You're gonna have to be quiet just for a second so we can pick up that sound.
Okay.
You know, when you say you can hear it, right? I'm not sure where we lost you, so if you could just back up maybe a sentence or so.
Okay.
All right, sorry about that. We're rolling. Go ahead.
All right. And so you can see the bubbles coming through there. Bubbles at the top. That smells good.
Now, do you aerate more bottles than you do decanting?
We do. And the reason being is that typically aeration, and this is typical only, but typically aeration is really for younger wines, and decanting is for older wines. And when you're talking about a restaurant, I mean, yeah, we've got some older wines, we do, but we have a lot more younger wines. So once I have or aerated the wine, and sometimes I'll use it in the terms, interchangeable. They're not interchangeable really, but because decanting is a certain procedure and aerating is a certain procedure. But once we've done that, then we're going to go through our standard service just as if we were just pouring straight out of a bottle. So I would go to the first lady in clockwise direction, pouring from the right, males, whatever, and then I would finish with the host. Okay? Makes sense? We don't really decant that many wines, so it's not a thing. Unless sometimes I have guests that bring in wines, like really old wines, and they ask us to open for them, and they want it. And so then we are in a decanting process, which is completely different.
No, you mentioned something about the cork earlier.
Very good point. Okay, so one of the things that affects, cork comes from trees, all from most from one location in the world. And they can be affected by a disease called cork taint. It's a TCH, I believe it is. And what that does is it impregnates the entire wine. It is non-detectable from the outside, but once the cork is open, now one thing you'll notice is some people will actually sniff a cork. Okay. The part is that it's a little bit of a misnomer because you cannot detect the quality of a wine by sniffing the cork. What you may be able to detect is if there's any taint, and that's it. So a small whiff is fine. Typically, what really most people are doing is testing the malleability of the cork. As we do remember the champagne cork when we touch that and to feel that. Feel how stiff this one is.
The stiffer the better, or is it?
No,
is it
not really.
Not necessarily. Just
not really. With
stiff,
young champagne corks, they are very malleable because they have to be to kind of explode
They kind of
and
expand
create
on the
that
bottom, too.
expand. Right. With a cork, this is a good. It's a little bit on the firm side, but it does have some movement, and so this is a good cork, and there's no evidence of cork taint at all. So just like we would done before, I'm going to present this to
But
you.
the cork taint's very rare, right?
Not as rare as you think. It affects about 5% of all corked wines in the world, and that's
Is
really.
that why a lot are going to the lids now?
Yes, that is one of the reasons that's where Stelvin enclosures came from. I mean, the direction of that has been driven by that.
So that doesn't necessarily mean it's a cheaper wine. It just means that
No.
they're aware
No.
that they're making.
In fact,
That's a debatable.
We'll
bit of a
talk
debatable
about, there's some time, we'll talk about the screw cap revolution, which was sort of driven by the New Zealanders. Just about everything that comes out of New Zealand now is enclosed with a screw cap. They're about 20 years into that evolution and seeing how the wines are evolving, and it's pretty interesting. The one thing is there's no cork taint.
Right.
It's hard to get away from the cork because it's part of the experience. People. That's why people make the assumption that cheaper wines may be connected to cork, but cheaper wines may be connected to the screw caps, and because you find it in all the grocery store wines. Well, that's only because the grocery store wines, those guys, they aren't spending the money on cork. Cork costs twice as much as a Stelvin enclosure.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So but with even higher level wines now, we're seeing the Stelvin enclosure because they know it protects the quality of their wine.
Right.
Long-term aging is still one of the questions that we
yeah.
just don't have the answer to yet. So I think that covers just about everything we need to know about wine service today. And so with that, I think we should try a little bit of wine.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers. Salud.
Cheers.